They just rolled out a new product and it looks basically the same as the thing I have. So if you took my stuff and I can show, hey, I had protections around this, right? I wasn't just kind of waving it around in the air for anyone to come take. Burden of production of evidence as appropriate shifts to the accused party. The party shall eliminate any requirement that the holder of a trade secret establish actual losses as a prerequisite to initiation of a criminal investigation. This is the money line. This is the big money line. IP infringement is probably one of the big kahunas in this thing. And it actually dovetails exactly with a lot of the things that we talk about on the show. So, literally, it's page 2. It's intellectual property. This is, this is the top of the agreement. We were all the way down at the bottom. So, what this talks about is trade secrets. So, basically, this says the U.S. likes trade secret protection, and China needs to optimize their business environment to make it a core element of their business environment. And, you kind of see the same pattern in a lot of these sections, right? This is kind of the preamble, this section 1.3. And then this is the scope. And so, this is what both parties do. And then it lists out what China has to do and then what the U.S. has to do. Here's what China has to do. So they're going to add to their laws what accounts for trade secret misappropriation. That basically means stealing trade secrets. Electronic intrusions, aka hacking, breach or inducement of a breach of duty not to disclose information that is secret. I think this is like human sources of hacking, unauthorized disclosure or use of the acquisition. Basically, all the mechanisms that you're going to use to get someone's IP. And so China needs to do some updating, and then it basically says that the U.S. doesn't need to change anything because the U.S. is all set on this. So you basically see that happening many times over. Here is the big deal with the IP stuff. Burden shifting in a civil proceeding. So the party shall provide that the burden of production of evidence or burden of proof as appropriate shifts to the accused party in a civil judicial proceeding for trade secret misappropriation where the holder of a trade secret has produced appropriate evidence, including circumstantial evidence and yada, yada, yada. It goes on to say what kind of evidence can be produced. So by the party that's harmed, right? So if you took my IP, here's what I need to do to establish that. Evidence that the accused party, so this would be the party, government, or company that is now taking your trade secret, had access or the opportunity to obtain the trade secret and the information used by the accused party is materially the same as that trade secret, right? So, hey, these people were able to get access to it either, through one of those mechanisms previously described. And we can see them now benefiting from this because now they're using it, or they just rolled out a new product and it looks basically the same as the thing I have. And evidence that a trade secret has been or risks being disclosed or used by a third party. So, hey, look, there's evidence of hacking here. And other evidence that, could be supporting that conclusion. So here, under the circumstance that the right holder provides preliminary evidence that measures were taken to keep the claimed trade secret confidential. So if you took my stuff and I can show, hey, I had protections around this, right? I wasn't just kind of waving it around in the air for anyone to come take. I put meaningful systems in place, mechanisms to keep this stuff confidential. The burden of proof or burden of production of evidence as appropriate shifts to the accused party. Okay, that's the key thing here. And then it also says the U.S. is good. We don't need to do anything. Okay, I get a kick out of that line every time. Now, here's why this is such a big deal, and they come back to this multiple times. Criminal enforcement. What's the threshold for criminal enforcement? The party shall eliminate any requirement that the holder of a trade secret establish actual losses as a prerequisite to initiation of a criminal investigation. This is the money line. This is the big money line. Then they talk about what China needs to do to increase the penalties, the criminal penalties that you can prescribe to someone that has now broken these trade secret laws. Okay, let me switch and come back to this and explain why that's such a big deal. So, establishing actual losses is not an easy thing to do. So, this is a big time law firm, and here's an article that they have about calculating monetary damages in trade secret cases. So this concept of actual loss, it's a legal term, and it's actually very arduous and very expensive and very difficult to establish actual losses, right? So basically, it says that at least 50% and possibly as much as 85% of the value of American companies is attributable to intangible assets. It could be trade secrets. That this report states that intellectual property theft is the second most common fraud in China. Okay, this wasn't a Chinese article. It just says, hey, this stuff happens all the time in China. Such trade secret or confidential information losses have enormous impact on the individual holders of these property rights. Often a company will need to resort to the bet the company litigation to assert their rights to their property. Basically, what this stuff goes on to describe is how difficult it is to establish actual losses for these kinds of things. And here's another article which talks about it in a little bit more plain English. Without a doubt, the burden of action falls mostly on the Chinese side. This agreement also eliminates any requirement that the holder of a trade secret establish actual losses as a prerequisite. Okay, that's what we're talking about. And it speeds up the criminal proceeding for intellectual. These changes are a tremendous relief for American businesses because they are the ones currently bearing the burden of proof for any trade secret misappropriation and are required to establish an actual loss in order to get criminal proceedings going. Numerous American businesses handle their losses resulting from intellectual property theft quietly, because bearing the burden of proof and establishing actual loss are both a costly and time-consuming endeavor. So they do it quietly. Also saying, hey, we don't want to admit to the world, and our shareholders, that we just got hacked and we lost all this value, or to our competitors. So basically, if you want to start criminal proceedings in China, you now need to make a statement that says, hey, we just lost $1 billion worth of value because they hacked us. And you don't know if you're even going to win. And you got to pay a bunch of money to go and establish the actual loss. And you got to get lawyers involved. And it's expensive and it takes a lot of time. So all of that is now gone. All of that's gone. Now what you do is you say, hey, we have sufficient evidence to prove that we were trying to protect this stuff. I've got evidence here, here, and here that someone hacked it or paid someone off or bribed someone or whatever mechanism they used to acquire this illegally. And look, we can see that they're now deploying it and using it, in their facility or to their benefit. So now China needs to ramp up the penalties on this. That's what this section 1.7 talks about. And it lays out, how then criminal proceedings can be taken and the reciprocity from, U.S. and China and these kinds of things. It talks about what the role of the government has to do. And then it talks about how this relates to specifically to the pharmaceutical industry, different than, say, the tech industry. So that's a big deal in terms of helping U.S. companies protect their trade secrets. It has fundamentally changed the process to be able to start these actual proceedings and see them through. Now, if they aren't seen through properly, or the U.S. feels like the Chinese courts or whoever it may be are not acting in good faith, then there is an escalation option at the bottom of this agreement. So this is a big deal on the IP front. Hi, this is Alex from Winner Take All. Thanks for joining us. Hope you enjoyed the content. Feel free to leave a comment, ask us questions, and definitely make sure to join us on our next live stream.